Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody, to another edition of Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor, with you on a Tuesday, a day after a pretty exciting Monday Night Football game, as we look ahead now to the home stretch of the NFL season. We'll get into some college basketball, likely throughout the program today, and how about a little Royals baseball? It has been an abnormally wild and crazy and eventful offseason for the Royals, who are making moves, it seems like now, every day. And we haven't talked a whole lot about it. So we'll get into that just a little bit. We're looking forward to that conversation as well today. All kinds of good stuff coming for you. Tommy, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Wild Monday Night Football last night. Man, it's been a while. I mean, I know we've had a couple of pretty good Monday Night Football games. This was the first one that I remember in a little while, like watching from start to finish and kind of being glued to the TV. It was pretty exciting.
Yeah, it was really good. I think that, when we look at it, it was meaningful. Both teams were good. It had a chance not to be good, with Drew Lock having to step in as the starting quarterback. I don't know that there's a tremendous drop between Geno and Drew Lock, but there's a drop. And then it delivered. And so it was awesome. And then is it next Monday night we get Baltimore, San Francisco, game of the year,
yeah.
Two top teams in each conference going head to head. So that will be really cool to see. These primetime games, and I don't know what the NFL can do about it. Last night, not an example, obviously, that was a good one. But we've had way too many just awful matchups. And, it's one thing if the game isn't very good. It's another if it's hard to even get excited for the game before it's played. We've had way too many of those. I don't know what the league can do. I don't know if there's a way to flex in games to prime time.
Well, this was a flex game, wasn't it? I mean, because remember the Chiefs. The Chiefs and the Patriots were originally scheduled for Monday Night Football. They flexed it out.
Okay, so if you do it early enough, I mean, you could do it. If you give them like a month in advance, and going to a Monday is not that big a deal. It's the Thursday issue is the bigger issue.
Yeah,
and so. Can you, in some way, a month out, maybe go and say, hey, we're going to need somebody? And there would be a whole lot that goes into that, right? Like a team can't do it more than, you don't want any team to have to play a Thursday more than one time and all that stuff. So it'd be hard, but I guess that just sort of becomes the danger with a Thursday night football game, which is already pretty odd and strange and all those things. But it was good last night. If you're a Seahawks fan, you're alive. If you're an Eagles fan, you're terrified. If you thought it was going bad for Kansas City lately, I'll see the Eagles, who now have lost 3 in a row. And they can't. They had a streak there where they had wins over Dallas, Kansas City, and Buffalo in back-to-back weeks. And then Miami was in the mix there on a win streak. Like they were cruising and grooving and beating good teams. And now, they can't get anything done. They get to come home against the Giants in Arizona, and then they get the Giants again. So they're probably going to win the rest of their games. But if you're an Eagles fan and we talk about like who are real contenders, I mean, you got to be pretty worried right now. There's no confidence right now that they can beat San Francisco in the NFC. I mean, there's them or Dallas.
Yeah, what's crazy about the NFL this season is that really I think we can all agree that the 49ers are probably the one team in the entire NFL that, I mean, they look like the legitimate Super Bowl contender. And that's a team that even lost 3 in a row earlier this season, but they look like the legitimate Super Bowl contender. Then after that, I mean, if we're going to power rank it, probably the Ravens at number 2. Then there's a bunch of teams that could be Super Bowl contenders, but each one of them have flaws. Kansas City's one of them. Dallas is one of them. Philadelphia is one of them. Miami is probably one of them. There are several teams that, are right there that, you wouldn't be surprised to see them, I think, in the Super Bowl, but all of them have what could end up being fatal flaws. And then there's, a handful of teams behind them. I wouldn't put Detroit in that category. They're probably a tier down where they're a nice team, but I don't think they're Super Bowl caliber. and then a bunch of other teams after that. So, I mean, really, it wouldn't surprise me, and it shouldn't surprise anybody if we end up seeing a Super Bowl between San Francisco and Baltimore.
Well, Baltimore is far more wide open to me than San Francisco, who is a very clear top. I think the gap between
You still
San
don't
Francisco,
think Baltimore is a clear
no,
cut?
it's not. That's not what I'm saying. Clear cut.
They blew out
I know.
Jacksonville on Sunday night.
What I'm saying is I think there is a big difference in San Francisco and the rest of the NFC compared to Baltimore and the rest of the AFC. Now, I say that San Francisco, remember, Debo got a little nicked up. They lose 3 games. So, I mean, even as good and as dominant as they've looked, there is this like thin ice thing floating around San Francisco. I mean, they couldn't beat anybody when Debo was out. They lost 3 in a row. So even San Francisco is a little dangerous, right? Like they're very top heavy. We've talked about that. And outside of that, they don't have much. So they've got to stay healthy as a big component of what they do. And last week even there were back-to-back plays where it looked like Purdy and McCaffrey were hurt. They both came back and were fine. But there is a little bit of a shaky nature, even to San Francisco, who's dominant when they're healthy. But yes, I think San Francisco's path appears much clearer at the moment than Baltimore's does, only because I think in totality, the AFC is much better than the NFC. San Francisco's the best team, but the AFC is a much better conference. Just look at the playoff teams. Look at who's going to end up in the playoffs out of the 2 leagues, and it becomes pretty clear. When you look at the AFC, and you've got a situation where Buffalo may not even be good enough to get in, and you look at the potential teams there that could come out of the AFC versus the NFC where you've got, a potential of Tampa Bay, New Orleans, and Atlanta, like 2 teams out of that league getting in, and Minnesota with their 9th string quarterback, and Tampa with Baker Mayfield. The Rams are interesting.
Hey, don't knock Baker Mayfield. He has looked incredible the last couple of weeks.
He's looked great. I love Baker Mayfield. I root for Baker Mayfield. But Tampa's not a threat, right? Tampa's not a threat. Minnesota's not a threat. Whoever comes out of the, South isn't a threat. There are 3 threats, maybe 4, when we look at Detroit out of the NFC. Maybe. But it looks like 3. And really, it might be 1, considering we've seen San Francisco wipe the floor with Dallas and Philadelphia this year. But we talked about this a little bit at the end of the show yesterday. I mean, in the AFC, we'll see what happens with Indianapolis and Houston, and if Buffalo can find their way in. But when you're talking Baltimore, Miami, Kansas City, Jacksonville, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and even if it's Houston, let's say it's Houston or Buffalo, because I just don't want to give Indianapolis very much credit for whatever reason. I mean, you're looking at teams that could all make a run. And I'm going to put Cincinnati in there, even with their backup quarterback, because he's looked fantastic. I think Jacksonville may actually be like the weakest of that group because they just can't figure it out. But Baltimore, Miami, Kansas City, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Buffalo, maybe Houston, the way they've played with if CJ Stroud comes back healthy. I mean, you're talking about any of those teams could make it. Now, Baltimore's got a clear advantage there. But the top to bottom depth of this playoff field is pretty wild. And we thought it was going to be that way in the AFC. You remember back to the very beginning of the season, we talked about how difficult the AFC is going to be. It's sort of ended up being the teams we thought it would. Some of them look a little different right now than we thought they would, but it's the same teams. And I think you can make a case that any of them could make a run. Whereas in the NFC, I would have a hard time making a case for any team but one. And that's the difference in the 2 leagues to me. Like, you'd have to convince me that anybody besides San Francisco has a shot right now. That's a tough sell.
I think it's going to come down to health. And we saw what happened with San Francisco. And you mentioned Debo, and Debo was a large part of the reason why they lost 3 in a row. But don't forget, they also were without Trent Williams for a while, and that was massive for the 49ers. Sure. And, the fact when, you've had a period of time where both Debo and Trent Williams were out simultaneously, that was a big time issue for San Francisco, barring some kind of major injury. Yeah, I mean, I think that San Francisco is at the top of the NFC, but they're not perfect. I think they're legitimate. I think that they're solid. I think they're really, really good, but they're not perfect. And, you have to go back a few weeks ago to understand that, but nobody is. Philadelphia clearly is not. Dallas clearly is not. Detroit clearly is not. I do think that, there's a reason why odds-on favorites are, who they are. There's a reason why San Francisco looks to be the favorite. I do think, though, that while I do agree with you that the AFC from top to bottom has a lot more dangerous teams that could get hot and could make a run in the playoffs, I'm not disagreeing with that at all. But I do think that you are forgetting or overlooking how powerful Baltimore has actually looked in the last several weeks. Like, the cream has risen to the top, and that cream is absolutely Baltimore. The way that they played against Jacksonville on Sunday night, the way that Lamar is not only using his arm, but using his legs. And this is probably, outside of the MVP season for Lamar, the best that he's looked in his career, I would say. Now, they did suffer an injury with that rookie Keaton Mitchell tearing his ACL. He's out for the year. They have had brutal luck with running backs, but they are incredibly explosive with their weapons they have, catching the football. And, if they can get Mark Andrews potentially back for the playoffs, I don't know exactly what that looks like. That's going to be a difference maker for them. And we talked about it before. Their defense is solid. And so I think that while I do understand and agree with the praise that we are heaping on San Francisco, I think Baltimore is worthy of that too in the AFC.
If Mark Andrews is able to come back, and I thought he was done for the season.
That injury wasn't as bad originally as what they thought it was. So I don't know where it stands right now.
That would change things. I would certainly change things for me because I think he is their best weapon. But San Francisco right now is 2 times more likely, according to Vegas odds. This is just Vegas odds, to win it than Baltimore is. And then and then the Chiefs are still right behind them. Interestingly, the Dolphins fall pretty far, So really, like, San Francisco's the only short bet right now. Even the Ravens are still, you can get 5.5 to 1 on the Ravens, which is pretty wild, whereas you can barely get 2 to 1 on the Niners. I like Baltimore. I think Harbaugh's great. It's not that I don't believe in Baltimore. I believe in Baltimore. I think they're equipped to make a run. I think that home field likely goes through there. I like all those things. I just think every game they'll have to play to get there is going to be tough. And I don't know that San Francisco is going to face that same thing. Dallas and Philadelphia just don't seem as daunting as what Baltimore would have to go through in totality. Dallas on the road. Dallas ain't winning anything. I'm a Cowboys fan. They're not going to win crap. They're just not. They're not a good enough team on the road. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think that I am. In Philadelphia, I can't figure out all what's going on with Philadelphia because, normally it's that their defense kind of stinks. Their defense wasn't terrible last night, and then they couldn't score. It was just a strange outcome. As I'm looking at these odds, it does, you could take a swing and get some pretty long odds on teams. It's an interesting year to do that. Buffalo stands out at 12 to 1. They've, of course, still got the task of getting there. I would imagine that if Buffalo, if all things were equal and you could tell me that they were for sure getting in, they would certainly be not as long as 12 to 1. Here's an interesting one for me. As you just take a swing or a stab at a team, the Rams. Like, what are the Rams? Remember that the Rams went across the country for an early game and took the Ravens to overtime. They're healthy finally. They haven't been all year. They've got their complement of weapons. They're loaded on offense. And don't forget, they still have Aaron Donald, and they added a bunch of pieces defensively. Man, I think the Rams are a really interesting team. They finished the year with San Francisco. But, Tommy, you can get the Rams right now at 80 to 1. 80 to 1. For a team that can run the ball the way they can with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, and we know Stafford, when he's out there, has still got a little left in the tank.
Kyron Williams is great.
I think that's a really interesting. Of all the teams you could bet on a long shot, they're way down there, and they look good. Like, for instance, the Lions sit at 18 to 1. Would you rather have the Lions at 18 to 1 or the Rams at 80 to 1?
Well, by the way, can you imagine a potential playoff matchup between Matthew Stafford and the Lions?
Yeah,
that would be incredible to watch. I think part of the reason why the Rams are a long shot right now and why they're kind of being forgotten about or overlooked, I think people are still thinking this is the Lions team of a year ago, and it's not.
The Rams team of a year ago,
The Rams team from a year ago, and it's clearly not. They're a team that they're healthy again, as you mentioned. Matthew Stafford looks pretty good. So I would not hesitate to put some money down on an 80-1 long shot odds on the Rams to make a run. I really wouldn't. And I think that, if you can list off all these, and there's probably 4 or 5 of them, these teams in the AFC that are dangerous in the playoffs. I'll agree with you. There aren't as many in the NFC, but if there's one, it's the Rams.
I'll find that, and I'm going to check all the sites to make sure 80-1 is the longest. But that feels like a fun $5 bet to make, right? They're interesting, and I just have sort of seen them, and I think about like what they are, and like they have a ton on offense when they're healthy, and I think their defense is probably a little bit better. I mean, I haven't paid any attention to their defense, and they've given up some points. It's just really like, is it good enough? I mean, they beat Seattle and Cleveland recently, and again took Baltimore to overtime on the road on a coast-to-coast game. They finished with New Orleans, the Giants, and then that game at San Francisco, which is really interesting. They haven't played San Francisco since like week 2. I wonder what. Let's look at what the early line is this week on the Rams taking on New Orleans. That feels like a really, really good bet because I'll bet you that it's not a huge line. I'm just going to take a quick peek here. That's a Thursday night game too, isn't it, this week? Rams Saints? Isn't that the Thursday? That's a really good. The Rams by 4. I'm all over that. That's a really good game. That's a playoff game potentially because New Orleans is looking like they're one of the playoff teams too. I think those are two teams kind of fighting for that last spot to some degree in the NFC as the AFC or the NFC South is all jumbled up. Yeah, New Orleans and the Rams both 7-7, very much in the mix for the final 2 spots there in the NFC. So that's a great Thursday night game. We'll talk more about that later, but I'm early line 4 Rams all over it. Rams at home 4 against New Orleans. Come on now. Let's go.
Give me the Rams.
All right, so Philadelphia loses. It gets, it just furthers this wacky year of the NFL where there are a lot of, teams that could be in the mix, but only maybe a couple that are separating themselves, and they get to play each other on the next time in the next Monday Night Football, which is going to be fantastic. Let's take a quick break. We got all kinds of fun stuff coming for you today here on the show. The IHOP hotline is open at 869-1240. We will have some giveaways. We'll give away our final pair of tickets to the Turnpike Troubadours. We will give away some HTO coffee. We'll have Dan Israel, the executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network, joining us at the top of the hour. Speaking of the Chiefs, if you can't get enough Chiefs coverage, you can check out the New Heights podcast with Jason and Travis Kelce. It's free on the Odyssey app. Follow it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast. A little baseball talk for the first time in a while when we return on Sports Daily.
Those are over.
Yo, I haven't got all day.
869-1240.
Time to get busy.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody, here to Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor alongside you. Glad to be here alongside you. Talking a little Major League Baseball here. That IHOP hotline, by the way, is open, 869-1240, Royals fans, because we're hitting the Royals here, Tommy, in an off-season. You know, I didn't really expect them to do a lot this offseason. I'm not sure anybody did. It got off to a bad start because you had the draft lottery bite them the wrong way, and they kind of lose positioning, and it was like, oh, no, like, here we go, not good. What are we going to do here? And then look, they come out, and they're as aggressive as any team is in this offseason so far in baseball, Tommy, and they've put together something that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, they have spent the fifth amount of money so far this offseason. That can always change as the offseason goes on. But as of right now, they've spent the fifth amount of money out of all Major League Baseball teams. Obviously, the Dodgers are at number one with Shohei Ohtani. But then it goes the Phillies, Diamondbacks, Giants, and then Royals. They've spent $105 million so far this offseason. And, I think there's a variety of reasons to that. I think number one, and most of all, they knew that last season was not acceptable. J.J. Piccolo said as much as soon as the season was over with, that the way that the team played, and I think that they were just outmatched, a majority of the season. So they made a commitment to go spend money. But on top of that, they want a new ballpark. They want to win. And on top of that, the AL Central is pretty winnable. And so I think that they thought, okay, we can go and make some additions. And if we spend some money, then we can maybe win this division as soon as this coming season.
So then the question becomes, has it been enough? And I think that it's good to see them spend money, but they're restricted too, Tommy. And is any money good money? Not necessarily. I mean, it's good when you're trying to convince the fan base, right? But, blindly throwing money around isn't the smartest thing to do. So then you look at the moves that they've made, and it's like, okay, I'm glad they're spending money. I'm glad they're making the commitment. That's what we asked them to do, right?
Right.
So now you look at the moves that they are making, and you've got Seth Lugo, who we talked about briefly, like the move. Will Smith, okay, it's a need. Chris Stratton, it's a need. Those two guys, however good they are, they were both a part of the Rangers bullpen that just won a World Series, albeit not a ton in the postseason, but it's an upgrade.
Nick
right?
Anderson is in the bullpen. They acquired him as well. That's another bullpen piece.
Yep. And again, not like needle moving back end guys or anything like that. But Will Smith closed games for the Rangers this past season when they had to have him, and he's a lefty. All of them become useful pieces. And they add Hunter Renfroe, which, whatever. He's fine. Experience in the lineup is going to be a helpful thing. But it's Lugo and Waka where they've really spent. And it's no more of, these young pitchers will develop. It is a commitment to the rotation with two. I mean, they're not the highest end free agents out there. So let's take Stroman and Giolito, two guys that the Royals had been rumored to be flirting with. You take those two guys, the difference between Stroman and Giolito to Waka and Lugo is not that big. And it's going to be huge financially, but reality is it's not that big. The Royals just found two pitchers. And, if Waka's healthy, he can lead your rotation if you need him to. But you've got two guys there. Cole Reagans is there, which was the best move they made last season. And then probably Brady Singer. And I guess Jordan Lyles, maybe as a fifth starter, whatever it ends up being. I mean, that is absolutely a respectable rotation. But it's a rotation that is clearly better than what they had last year. I mean, it's not even in the same stratosphere. I don't know if they're a full run better, but they're a half run better as far as like starter ERA.
Well, it's a significant upgrade at rotation. I mean, when you're looking at a starting rotation of Waka, Lugo, Reagans, who was a revelation a year ago,
Yep.
Brady Singer, who looks like he's coming along finally, and then Jordan Lyles, whatever, didn't do great last season, but if they throw him out there as a fifth starter or whatever,
right.
I'm okay with that. That is a significant upgrade. And how many times last season did we say this pitching rotation is a joke? There really wasn't a ton of conversation about the lineup. Yeah, there were flaws in the lineup. Absolutely there were. But there were also injuries. Vinny Pasquantino was out for the entire season with an injury, and Salvador Perez missed time and things like that. So there were conversations about the lineup, but by and large, it was about the pitching staff in general. It was the rotation and it was the bullpen. There were major, major issues with that pitching staff a year ago. And this is JJ Piccolo and Matt Quatrero sitting down and saying, look, we have to upgrade this now. And we don't have a ton of confidence and faith in the guys in our farm system to pitch, the guys that we have tried to develop, the guys that we have drafted. They're not ready. They may never be ready. Not only did they go out and acquire some of these players, but they've traded away a couple of the young arms that they were wanting to groom and bring along. Jackson Kowar is no longer on the team. They traded him away, and so when you don't have a farm system where you feel confident in bringing up these young pitchers and developing them and having homegrown stars and homegrown talent, you got to go elsewhere. And if you can't spend the major dollars, if you're kind of, you're handcuffed because of your market and all of that, I'm perfectly okay with guys like Lugo and Waka to anchor your rotation and guys like Smith and Stratton and Anderson to be in the bullpen. At that point, I feel so much more confident about the pitching staff that the Royals are bringing out on a game-to-game basis than I was a year ago.
I mean, there's no question. And then it becomes two things after that. One, okay, so is this rotation and bullpen through the additions that they've made going to be good enough to compete in the AL Central?
It should be.
Look, I think most people think it is.
Yeah.
I do too. So you've got that. And that's the first bit of exciting news.
Let's be clear very quickly. It's not because they're a world beater rotation. It's because they should be a solid rotation, and the AL Central is not very strong.
It's not very strong. And that's good, right? They just happen to play in a division that's not very good. So you've got that. And then there's two more pieces, I think, as we evaluate the offseason and what will be a season. The other piece is the lineup. Do you continue the trajectory of Bobby Witt Jr.? I think the answer is absolutely yes. Is Salvador Perez going to have enough in the tank to contribute next year? I think the answer to that is probably yes. Is Vinny Pasquantino going to be able to come back? Now, listen, he was rumored in a trade at the trade deadline. This was Ken Rosenthal. The Royals pondered the idea of trading him for Jesus Luzardo, which I would have signed off on. As much as we all like Vinny Pasquantino and his character and all that stuff, it's hard to find starting pitching, and Luzardo was pretty dang good, and he's electric. I would sign off on that move. I think it's off the table now when they signed Waka, but just for instance. But, can he come back and they need his bat. They need another bat. Can Michael Garcia, continue to be a player that surprises? Renfroe should help.
Yeah. I like the Renfroe signing. I do.
Yeah, it's fine. He's going to hit probably 20 home runs next year. But they need experience.
The Royals have had this really bad habit over the last couple of years of signing over the hill sluggers, guys that are going to strike out a ton, maybe hit 20 home runs. I mean, look at Carlos Santana as an example of that. And I know they didn't trade for him, but they developed, Hunter Dozier was kind of the same way. They didn't trade for him. They had him in their system for a long time, but he was kind of the same way. I think that Renfroe is a better signing. I think that the fact that he does have the experience, but it's not one of those like, wait, what? Why are you bringing him in? I didn't feel that way.
I think
with
it's
Hunter Renfroe.
I think it's equitable to the Santana deal, and
I think it's better than the Santana deal. I think that
it's fine. Santana was handy. Santana got on base and gave them decent trade value, which is that's always the backup plan to all these kinds of moves. Like if it doesn't work, all of these players they're signing have trade value. It just comes with the territory. I like the Renfro move too, just because they need experience. In fact, I think they probably could use another affordable, experienced, handy bat, and there'll be plenty of them out there as the market settles.
And someone also that they acquired that really has not gotten much talk about, and I really like him, is Garrett Hampson. They brought him on. He's a utility guy. He's never going to be a guy that is going to be, a major focus of your offense, but he can play multiple positions. He's got speed. He can get on base. He played for the Rockies for a couple of years. He's somebody that, reminds me of those Royals days where they had Gerard Dyson and, other guys like Terrence Gore, other guys like that could get on base and steal bases for you. And having that speed, I think, is important. And the versatility that he can play multiple positions on the field, I think, helps too. That's another acquisition. It's not going to be somebody that we're going to be talking about a ton, but I do think it provides that depth.
Yeah, it does. And it's just pieces, right? I don't know on the bats. Like they need some of the homegrown guys to develop, and they need to be able to protect Bobby Witt Jr. So I think the lineup, though, showed enough signs that we're all generally okay with it. So then the other piece, the third piece for me is, okay, you spent, I believe it, absolute tip of the cap. Way to go, John Sherman and Piccolo. Love what you did. I am a big, big fan of the aggression, and I think they're not just wild and crazy moves. I think they're moves that make a ton of sense for this team. Love it. Now, if you are in contention, do you pull the trigger on a big-time trade to help compete? And I think that will be an interesting piece, right? They don't have a tremendous farm system. In fact, it's not very good at all. So will they be aggressive and take on some salary at the deadline if they need to? I think becomes that, because, while this team looks like it can contend, it's certainly not one that you're like, okay, we'll just ride this through. They're going to need a little ammo if they're going to make the final push into the postseason, most likely. So that's something I think to pay attention to. Then the other one,
think that, just to answer that, I think history says that they will if they're in contention. Johnny Cueto,
they will
Ben
under
Zobrist.
Dayton Moore and old ownership. But this is a new group.
I do think that, at least history tells us that over the years when the Royals have been in contention, they've been willing to go out and acquire at the trade deadline. So I know it's a different group. Piccolo worked under Dayton Moore, right? So it's not completely different.
Right.
But of course, we need to cross that bridge. They need to be in contention. I think the biggest thing for me is setting those expectations now. I mean, you went out and you spent. There were very, very little expectations a season ago. They're going to be bigger this year. We're talking about them contending in the AL Central. You can't come out of the gate and fall on your face. That just can't happen. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of pressure on them when we get into April about how they start their season with these new acquisitions they have.
The other piece for me in the final piece of this is the conversations have to continue with Bobby Witt Jr. on trying to lock him up. So you've done all this. That's great. You're definitely helping the fans. If you want to get them excited about a baseball stadium, it needs to be the house that Bobby Witt Jr. built. And you need to buy out a couple arbitration years and get him locked up for the long term. And he's still got control and all of that stuff. But, it is still the most important thing I think that they can do. You remember there were outrageous conversations about how they should trade him and do all that stuff. And
I was in that camp for a little while. I thought blow the whole thing up,
No, but this is why you don't, because we saw him quickly develop. Then it's like, whoa, he's an MVP candidate. Like he's going to be a dark horse MVP candidate next year with Shohei Ohtani out of the AL for real. Like he'll put up the kind of numbers that, if things continue along the path they did a year ago. He's a free agent after 2027. That means you get 4 more years as of right now of Bobby Witt Jr. Make it 6. Go buy out 2 arbitration years. Go extend that. Go buy out 2 free agency years. If you're Bobby Witt Jr. right now, who's 23 years old and will be, I believe, when the season starts. So let's say he's 24, even if he's 24 during the season. 6 more years, he'll buy out till he's 30. I mean, he would do it.
I think the challenge, and I'm not saying that he wouldn't, but the challenge in that is the historical nature of the struggle that the Royals have had in locking up their young stars over the years, right? It hasn't happened hardly at all. I mean, look
Other
at
than Salvador
right,
Perez.
but look at Carlos Beltran, look at Johnny Damon, even Zach Greinke. Like some of these guys that came up. There have been others, that they've been able to. Alex Gordon was there forever, and Billy Butler
Eric
was there
Hosmer,
forever.
Mike
Hosmer for a
Moustakas.
while, but like, look, I think that the historical nature tells you when you've got kind of a unicorn. Bobby Witt Jr. is kind of a unicorn in that way. He's like a George Brett. That there's not the historical context of the Royals having a ton of success in locking up their young homegrown stars for a long time.
See, what's interesting is I would agree with that perception. I'm not sure that it is reality because more recently than Damon and that crew that you mentioned, there was Alex Gordon and Hosmer and Moustakas and Kane and
Those guys were
Salvador
all really good
Perez.
players. They're not Bobby
Yeah.
Witt Jr. level players.
Well, no, but I mean, Salvador Perez is a Hall of Famer.
Sure.
Right.
Perez. Yeah. I think Perez is the exception to that. But
And
I'm not going to
so
put Alex Gordon and, Billy
No,
Butler
no.
and Eric Hosmer on the same level as Bobby Witt.
No, not what we're looking at right now. But I think the Royals have to beat that perception. That's why they got to get the deal done because your fans right now who you're trying to sell on a stadium, that's what they think, right?
Well,
All
yeah.
our great players are just going to leave. Go convince them otherwise.
And growing up, when I did in this area, it was a foregone conclusion when the Royals had a young star to enjoy him while you could, because they were going to leave. And either the Royals were going to trade them and try to get value back, or they were going to leave in free agency. That perception is a little bit different nowadays. But man, there's PTSD, I think, in place for Royals fans from a long time ago.
Right. And
why
you got
to get it done.
That's why you got to get it done,
Yeah.
right? Is to buck that perception while you're trying to build a new stadium and convince people that, like, no, we're going to be major players in Major League Baseball. Great start to the offseason. It's been on our list of things to talk about. We owed it to the Royals, as we're the home of the Royals. Not just that, but they've earned it. This has been a fantastic offseason, not just because they're spending money. Again, like there are lots of teams that spend lots of money and it's not good. They have spent really good money, in my opinion, in good, appropriate risk taking in it. All right. Let's give away some HTO coffee here. So this is the Brew House coffee. You know about the great iced tea at HTO, more than 24 flavors. It's all there for you. How about a couple of coffees? So you can get the Brew House offerings at the East location in Wichita or in Derby. Hot, iced, specialty drinks, all kinds of stuff. All kinds of ways you can change it and make it how you like it, just like your favorite coffee stops. Plus, it's delicious. So do that. While you're in, you can get a special deal on gallons for the Christmas holiday of iced tea. Check it out. 2 free Brewhouse cards right now to our first caller on the IHOP hotline. Stay tuned for a chance to win Turnpike Troubadour tickets as well today. We'll come back. We'll wrap up hour number 1 on Sports Daily.
Oh, okay, take it easy. We're going on the air.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Austin pointed out something to us on social media that the Royals also just avoided arbitration with Chris Bubich. I forgot about Bubich. He was doing all right. Very limited action last year, but hopefully he can bounce back. He was one of the young guys that did have some promise. Travis wins that HDO Brewhouse coffee. Congratulations, Travis. Get in there. Let us know what you think. We'll give away some Turnpike Troubadours in the second hour. We will also have Dan Israel, the executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network, on with us in the second hour. So, Tommy, I told you yesterday, I have my son right now. He goes to school just half the day, so he hangs with me while I'm on the radio and he's doing stuff. And I decided, okay, well, I'm going to let you watch a movie this week. It's Christmas. Home Alone. You get to watch my favorite. And I came out yesterday and I ran upstairs to do something. And I just hear from downstairs, like, Dad, come here. And I come down and I see them, thank goodness. But he had the stairs booby trapped and just laughing and laughing. And I'm like, all right. So like, we can't really do that in real life. Like, Dad will go to the hospital and it's not like the Wet Bandits on Home Alone. And so he's like, oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I get home from work last night and there's another booby trap, which is just like a stick, right? Sitting on the stairs of the garage. And I pull in and I see the door swing open and he's just like so excited. And I'm like, okay, I see the stick. Like, what are we doing here? Like, I think that I have set myself up for potential disaster here. He's 4.5. So no judgment if that's not old enough for appropriate Home Alone. I don't really care what you think. But,
you know what he's doing? So, like, these are very simple booby traps. He's lulling you into a false sense of security.
That's what I'm afraid of.
And you're going to be walking up the stairs, and he's going to throw a paint can over the banister, and it's going to hit you right in the face. Like, just wait for that. It's going to happen.
And the thing is, and we hear this all the time with him, he's 4.5, right? People tell us all the time when they spend any time with him, they're like, I can't believe how good his sense of humor is. And we're like, yeah, we know. You know, he was a COVID baby, so not everybody spent a ton of time with him as he was little. And so we're like, I know he has he has a very advanced sense of humor in like what he thinks is funny, what he delivers to be funny. Like, he's really funny. And so I know that, and I'm like, does that mean he's gonna like do anything for a laugh? Because there's a good chance after seeing Home Alone that's gonna come at my expense.
You know, he looks like Kevin McAllister a little bit too. I mean, he's got the blonde hair, kind of looks like him. I remember, by the way, this was a few years ago. Do you remember the show Pop-Up Video? Remember watching that on VH1, I think, where they would do music videos and they would pop up little bubbles of like facts about the song. So they did one of those, but for Home Alone. So it was the entire movie, and they would do little, pop-up bubbles on facts about the movie and things like that. And basically every prank that with the booby traps and everything around the house, it would pop up and say, in reality, this will kill you. Like, in reality, the Wet Bandits would be dead. And it kind of ruins the movie. Like, because I'm not laughing anymore. I'm like, oh my God, like that's actually going to kill the person.
As a cartoon. No, it's good. Home Alone. So when I was a kid, I was like Kevin McAllister. I was that age when that movie came out, I think. People used to make me deliver the lines because I looked like him, and I, like my son, was like a comedian and wanted to make people laugh. So they would just, do the line. And I'm thinking about it now, and I'm like, man, like I know what I would have done for a laugh back then, and I'm screwed here. Like, something's gonna happen to me, and it may happen during the show. He's out there now, and like if I don't make it back for a break, he got me.
Today's Home Alone 2. You did Home Alone.
Well,
yesterday,
it is.
Home Alone 2 today.
So it scares him a little bit too. Like, the movie scares him a little bit. Like, when his parents forgot him, he's like, I don't like this. And I'm like, well, you got to so we already turned that off. Like, he didn't like 2 very much. I think it was a struggle to get to that part of the movie yesterday. And I don't think he wants to like go through the emotional ride of getting there again.
Go ahead, Jed.
Well, if he's going to get you, let's just hope that it's the saran wrap, glue, and feathers. Because that's definitely, and it's definitely
not
the
fatal. Electrocuted doorknob. Yeah.
Let's hope that he's not launching bricks off the side of a building, hitting you in the face.
Movie's so good. It's my favorite Christmas movie. God, it's good. I love that movie so much. And 2 is just as good. I've actually heard 3 is awesome. I don't know that I've seen it. I'm going to have to check that out with the kids. Somebody told me that. They said 3 is sneaky good. And then I'm sure they get a little more ridiculous as it goes. But nothing beats the original 2. So good. All right. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. Dan Israel, executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network, joins us when we return on Sports Daily.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Caught! Touchdown! Kansas City!
Hey, Chiefs Kingdom, we have you covered. Joining Sports Daily Live, executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network, Dan Israel.
And we begin hour number 2 here at Sports Daily with a little Chiefs talk. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor back with you. Dan Israel joining us here. Dan, well, this is a different feel than it's been for a few weeks. Not perfect, but pretty dang good. Kind of what we needed to see out of the Chiefs, I thought, on Sunday. What'd you think?
Yeah, I didn't think the execution was perfect, but certainly more appropriate. They seem to eliminate penalties in the most timely or untimely moments, so that helps a little. And, it always helps to play a team that you're, clearly better than in talent, in my opinion. Don't know if you could argue that the coaching is better or not, but you could certainly argue that there's more talent on the Chiefs team than the New England Patriots. So I thought it was a good outing. I thought the Chiefs did what they needed to do, which was win. And I think there are still great areas of concern. Kadarius Toney, certainly. Marquez Valdes-Scantling. There was a moment where Mahomes decided to throw to McKinnon outside the end zone when MVS was open inside the end zone, wide open inside the end zone. Don't know if he saw him or not, but if that was a conscious decision, I think that tells you a lot. But all in all, I thought it was largely a good outing.
I think it brings up a really good question that we discussed yesterday. I know a lot of people are talking about. Do you think, Dan, that the Chiefs have to have Toney or MVS on the field at all moving forward? Can they run their playbook without those two guys on the field, or do they have to have them in some capacity?
Well, it's interesting. MVS certainly possesses the speed and size differential that you want out there as a threat. But, guys, I got to be honest. If I'm a team game planning against the Chiefs, I'm not that worried about either of those guys. They don't produce. Even if they get targeted, if it's not effective, you double and triple team the guy who is, which is 87. And so, to me, I would say it's time. There's no way Tom Brady would have lasted all season without yelling at a receiver for the things that are going on between those two. And at some point, Mahomes is going to have to not be the nice guy and say, I threw you the ball. Can you or can you not catch? Now, that's my take on it. Not inside that locker room. Don't want the locker room to descend into, a fractured state by any means. But I just feel like, he's biting his lips when he's making perfect throws and he's coming out of those with interceptions when that shouldn't be. So at the very least, the drops and the lack of forward progress that contribute to some of these 3 and outs and or non-third down conversions. I did appreciate on Sunday. I thought they did a much better job on 3rd and long. So that was good to see. But to your point, I would set 1 or 2 of them to make a point for a game or two and see what you got. They'll get Justin Ross back this week. I don't know whether they'll activate him. Do you want a guy in there that maybe doesn't know, hasn't been in the groove, so to speak? Why not? Why not try it? I mean, the Raiders shouldn't present that big of a problem for us. So I'd like to see it personally.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said Mahomes does a good job of biting his lip. He didn't as much on that drop turned into interception by Toney. Andy Reid talked yesterday, and somebody asked if it's, is it hard or do they plan to keep giving him chances? And Reid was not as jovial, and not that he's jovial about it, but it was pretty much like he knows he's got to make those catches. He's a good kid. I'll leave it at that. So I get the impression that, while everyone had his back on the penalty and Travis Kelce waxed poetic on his podcast about him, and then it happens again, I do think that, you can feel a sense of them sort of being done with it. And I do think, so yesterday became the question, can they operate what they need to do, basically just using Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, and the running backs? I couldn't think of another NFL team that only has, like 3 options like that. Most have at least 4. San Francisco, who's way top heavy, has 4. So we couldn't think of an example. But can they be okay if it's Ross and he doesn't do much? Like, are they able to filter through 3? I mean, why else do they have to keep going back to these guys that continue to make mistakes?
Yeah, I'd really rather see them get into a groove with a guy like Watson, get him out there and get him the targets. I think one of the things, that we know with football players is when you're coming in and out, and Danon Hughes has spoken to this a lot, for a guy who played 6 years in the league as a wide receiver and a special teamer, I think it's a valid point. When you're checking at the sideline after every play, whether or not you stay in or go out, you kind of get in it. You can't get in a groove. And I'd like to see them use fewer guys and get those guys in the groove. And I also think, is there, certainly with the creativity of Andy Reid, he could create an offensive plan that doesn't require these guys to be out there. And so my question then kind of falls to is there a workplace out there where a guy doesn't do his job and just is kept in that role? That is there a workplace out there that succeeds or that progresses when bad behavior, or in this case, lack of performance, aren't somehow held accountable? And I feel like, I harken back to the Todd Haley eras when he sat Derek Johnson, and Derek Johnson told me it was the best thing that ever happened to him. Taught him to play football better, taught him to understand the game better. He had time to think about things, about, where before he was trying to figure out the game plan for the week. So sitting, knowing he wasn't going to play, gave him time to work on his game. And when Derek Johnson came back from that sit down, we all remember that. We all thought Todd Haley was crazy. And when he came back from that, he was a better football player. And so to me, at some point, how are you holding these guys accountable? Look, I don't want to suggest it's not being done behind the scenes, because it's very likely that's more Reid's style. But ultimately, these guys live for being out there on Sunday. Take away the 1 or 2. You can't take away his game check. So take away the other thing that's most important to him, which is playing time. Make him inactive. What does that tell other teams about MVS? What does that tell other teams that might be considering some of these guys? I just feel like that it's time.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side, Dan, I mean, I think that if, we're going to talk about the bad, and there clearly was bad, there was good too. And clearly Rashee Rice has emerged as the wide receiver 1 for this team. And we've seen it over the last 4 or 5 weeks. We know that he's also struggled with drops over the course of the season, but just the explosive ability, the way that he's running these routes and gaining the trust with Patrick Mahomes, it's been really interesting to watch his ascent at the same time that MVS and Kadarius Toney are struggling, and Sky Moore even, to that regard. And just the number of snaps that Rashee Rice is playing compared to those guys and how that's changed from the beginning of the season to now. What are you seeing in the way that Rice has grown into this role?
Well, I think it directly correlates to his targets. The more he's out there and performs, the more he gets targeted. And that's why, to me, if you've got 2 guys that are being targeted that aren't elevating or aren't progressing, then let's move on and see what some of these other guys do. I think we all judge people as to blue sky, potential versus actual hitting that ceiling. And at some point when you recognize, okay, we've hit the ceiling, this is what these 2 individuals are right now, then let's slide those guys aside and see what we got out of the other guys. So for me, and you're right, Rashee's looked great. I mean, watching him progress has been fun. He's starting to become that guy. We're talking about him as a legit number 1 now, and he's a rookie. I just feel like that's an outstanding situation to be in. But the Sky Moore, the Kadarius Toney, the MVS thing, to me right now, we need to put their growth on pause. That needs to be something that's dealt with in the off season. And let Justin Watson, let's see what Justin Ross is all about. Let's figure out some of these things if we've got any kind of candidates for the playoffs. And I think that's probably part of the hesitation, to be honest with you guys. Last year's probably unquestionably, we are not progressing in the playoffs without a big catch from MVS. We are not maybe scoring without the Kadarius Toney in the Super Bowl. I don't know about that because we did it with Sky Moore too on the other side. But I guess I understand their hesitation. I feel like we're a little late. I would have loved to have done this a little early in December, but the schedule's been so grueling. Now that we've kind of got a lull on the schedule, isn't there a way we can maybe find a middle ground here? I'd like to think so.
Let's talk about the defense for a second, Dan. More like what we are used to seeing from them. It was against the Patriots with Bailey Zappi. I get that. But, as we look at the playoff landscape, which is creeping up pretty quickly here, it does still feel like it's going to have to be the Chiefs have one of the top defenses in the league if they want to go try to repeat as a champ.
Yeah, it was really good to see them get a turnover. I think, anytime you can steal a possession from a team, that's a significant accomplishment. And so for them to be able to, which frankly hasn't happened as much these past few games, past month or so, that was encouraging to see. I thought they were getting good pressures. There are still times when these blitz leave us wide open. I don't know if that's just Bailey Zappi having a good moment or if that's, just a scheme issue, but our defense is just so much fun to watch. And I feel like it's really, when they're playing well, you're just never out of the game. At the end of that game with the Patriots, Kadarius Toney has the interception. Notice how I phrased that. He has the interception, and I felt like, this is going to be a 10-point game, man. This is, I don't know. This is tough. They went down and scored, and all of a sudden we're within 2 scores with a lot of time left on the fourth quarter clock. And then I remembered our defense. Our defense isn't going to allow that. Not in one quarter, not the way they play in the second half. And that's a lot of fun to be around, especially after all these years of this high potent, extremely powerful offense, to be able to say, yeah, you're done scoring, guys. You have a seat. I think it's fun. And I'm so encouraged by that. I think it's going to be a tough decision next year because I think if you really want to go out and get a guy like, I think the DeAndre Hopkins thing this year was tough to do because of the Chris Jones contract. I think it's going to be tough next year. They're going to have to make a decision there with Chris and who knows whether he'll have a change of heart or if it's still going to be about money, but you can't afford to pay the kind of salaries that we're paying to the top 2-3 players on our team without a hometown discount. Not go out and get a guy who's going to make $14, $15, $16 million a year as a wide receiver anyway.
How'd you feel about the running back room on Sunday and knowing that Isaiah Pacheco looks like he'll be able to return this week, knowing that Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a pretty good game on Sunday against the Patriots. Of course, Jerick McKinnon throws for a touchdown in the game. Just knowing how versatile those two guys are and with the return of Pacheco, I feel like this may be the best place that the running back room has been in all season.
Yeah, I would agree completely. I feel like Clyde Edwards is in. I love having Pacheco out there. Don't get me wrong. I think he's your number one guy. His energy, both on and off the field, is incredible. But I was pleasantly surprised by CEH. I thought he played like the old Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I thought he maybe even running tougher than that. He was running heavier. I think he's gained some weight actually, but I felt like he had a great day. And it's a shame that the guy in front of him right now is Pacheco because he showed he can still start in this league. But this is one of the things I would really like to see. And I get, I just talked about how guys got to get in a rhythm and a groove, and you can't really do a running back by committee with 3 guys and get any of them in that. But one of the concerns I have about Pacheco is this shoulder, man. He isn't going to back off with the way he runs. And it's proving that his running style is beating that shoulder up. This is the same shoulder that was injured before. And I worry about his longevity with the way he runs. So hopefully they can somehow figure out a way to help Clyde Edwards-Helaire spell that without still losing Pacheco as a starter, because it's just so fun to watch him out there and to have him on the field forever, any down. But it is something else when you think about those 3 in the running back room, man, to have that much quality in your running backs. Teams struggle to find one, and it feels like we have 2.5 or 3. So pretty impressive, and definitely liked what he did in New England.
here's the solution to the wide receiver conundrum. Just line up Jerick McKinnon out there. It's that time of year. Turn him loose, unlock him, unleash him. I know there's injury risk with him too, but let him fly.
It's not a bad idea, Jacob. I don't have a problem with that at all, man. We know he can catch, right? And you're kind of industry. I think part of the problem is speed downfield. That a lot of what these routes are, the top of the routes are timed to give Mahomes a progression and all of that, and we see running backs catching the flat all the time, but that's a really short route. That's an outlet route, and so could he do some of the Wes Welker stuff? I don't know. I'd like to see him try because he's a pretty good athlete, but somebody needs to rise up and be that guy that the quiet voice right now that isn't speaking needs to start shouting. And that's why I say just let's give some other people a try, because MVS and Tony and Sky really haven't done anything with it. I mean, they've been holding the key to the city for 3 months now, and nothing's really emerged.
Schedule loosens up. You got the rate. I agree. Now's the time. You got a chance here before you get to the postseason to see if somebody else can do it. All right, you got a Christmas Day game, pretty unique here, coming up against the Raiders. What do you guys have in store for us?
Yeah, we're working on a couple of different things. I don't know what we're going to pull off. This is a noon kick for us, so it's really difficult. That format just doesn't lend itself with a lot of extra time. We're trying to make it as special as we can. We've got messages from all the players for listeners, and we'll be playing those all day. But hoping some things pop here and see what we can have. It's going to be fun to be on Christmas Day, though, right? Nothing better than sitting home at a holiday and watching real football that matters. And at least to me, I guess I'm not enough of a college fan, but I love this idea of us being on. I thought Saturday's games last week were a full slide. That was fun, traveling out and getting to watch games all day long that mattered, that meant something. Watching that Broncos get beat always feels good. And so I'm looking forward to playing on Saturday and on Christmas and entertaining everyone.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. And, of course, a Chiefs win would be a nice Christmas gift for everybody, or maybe a wide receiver not dropping a pass. Is that too much to ask for, Santa? Let's get that done. All right, Dan, we appreciate it. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we'll talk again next week.
Same to you guys. I hope your families, your listeners, everybody out there have a wonderful holiday.
All right, there goes Dan Israel, executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network. Always appreciate Dan's insight there. From the ground level, boots on the ground, if you will. And we appreciate that. If you missed any of it, you can go back and listen for free on the Odyssey app. Okay, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. Tommy and Jad have been discussing, and maybe we need to bring this out. We've kind of given you our best Christmas movies, our favorite. What about the worst ones? What about the worst Christmas movies? I got to really think about this. I don't know what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to ponder this and try to find something here during the break, but we'll get into it next on Sports Daily. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily here. All right, Tommy and Jad have been talking about worst Christmas movies. We brought up Home Alone and my son trying to, booby trap me. Home Alone is my favorite. Home Alone and Home Alone 2, really. It's kind of a tie. I like them both. Those are my favorite Christmas movies. And that's what you hear a lot about is like everybody's favorite Christmas movies, and there's so many good ones. We haven't really discussed, and I've been like scouring through during the break here of worst Christmas movie. Now, you guys clearly have more opinions on this than I do because I looked at a list. I don't think I've seen any of these movies. Like, I haven't seen them, like the ones that are listed as worst. We watched that one with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sinbad, Jingle All the Way.
Yeah,
that was pretty terrible. I didn't like that really at all, but it was fine watching it with my kids. So I don't know. I mean, apparently there's a Hulk Hogan Christmas called Santa with Muscles.
I remember that. Yeah.
I haven't seen a lot of these. I just don't know them.
Jad's got one in mind that is another former professional wrestler in a Christmas movie.
That's right.
Okay.
The one I've selected is Santa's Sleigh, Slay. It is a Christmas horror film. And the tagline is he's keeping a list, pray you're not on it. The whole idea behind it is Bill Goldberg is Santa, who
is this a Goldberg movie? Okay.
Yeah. He's the son of the devil who lost a wager. And so for 1,000 years, he had to bring toys to all the good little boys and girls. But this is the year after the 1,000th year is up. So now he can go back to killing people.
And some of the cast list is, it's awful. Like Fran Drescher is in it and Chris Kattan is in it. Like, that just sounds like a terrible cast for a terrible movie.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know what your issue with the nanny is, but okay. Wow, Jason says The Grinch with Jim Carrey. We just watched that on Sunday night. I think that movie's great. I think it's good.
I like the Grinch.
I like that movie.
I like The Grinch. I don't like that version. I agree with Jason.
Really?
I'm not a big fan of that version. It's a little too over the top. I'm not a huge fan of that. I'll tell you my vote though for worst Christmas movie, and I'm sure it might have been on the list that you looked at. Christmas with the Cranks, Tim Allen and Jamie Lee Curtis.
It's on there, but I didn't see it.
It is,
and
I hate that movie so much.
Why is Tim Allen in another Christmas movie besides the Santa Claus?
That's
not
point.
okay.
That's a great point. I hate that movie so much. And the reason for that, I mean, the basic plot, if you haven't seen it, is that they're a couple, Tim Allen and Jamie Lee Curtis. Their daughter goes off, moves away. They're empty nesters. All they want to do is just go away for the holiday. They want to take a tropical vacation. They want to leave it all behind. And their entire neighborhood guilts them into staying home and putting on a big Christmas celebration. And it makes me angry. I'm like, let these people do what they want to do. If they want to go and be on a tropical beach on Christmas, let them do it. Dan Aykroyd plays like the leader of the neighborhood, and he like constantly guilts them into putting up Christmas lights and all these different things. And it's like, leave them alone. They want to go to Hawaii for Christmas or wherever it is. Let them go and do it. I don't know what the problem is.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen hardly any of these. You know what an underrated Christmas movie is? And I saw it because apparently Bad Santa 2 was a bad Christmas movie according to these lists that I found.
I like Bad
but
Santa.
Bad Santa 1 was really good.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Have you seen the sequel to A Christmas Story? So it's A Christmas Story 2 that came out maybe 10 years ago. That one's really bad. I would put that one on the list.
Yeah, that is really bad.
You can't do that. Like A Christmas Story is timeless. I was trying to remember, and you guys, is there anything in A Christmas Story that I would not want my kids to see, if you know what I mean? That one's kid safe, right?
I mean, he says fudge in the movie.
No, I don't care about that.
Okay.
I don't care about language. I'm talking about the magic of Christmas. Anything that would mess with the magic of Christmas in that movie?
No.
Okay. I need to watch that one with my kids. You know, what's funny about that movie, I did not see that movie until I was probably about 27 or 8 years old.
Really?
And I know that will surprise, but never even heard about it. Never even didn't even know what it was. My sister-in-law one year was like, because it was her family tradition to watch that movie. And I don't think anybody in my family had seen that movie. Like, we just didn't even know, like, wasn't even on our radar. And we got together as like a large family and watched it. And man, we laughed forever at that. Like, we were like, what? How did we miss this? And now I've seen it a billion times because it's great.
If you look at pictures of me as a child, I know you said you looked like Kevin McAllister. I looked like Ralphie. I was Ralphie from A Christmas Story. I had blonde hair and glasses. And I mean, I looked like Ralphie in the early 90s.
There's just, that movie is just so perfectly executed as what it's like to be a kid around Christmas time.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's just such a, like, timeless. It
And
doesn't matter the generation.
Kind of like you, it took me a while. I had never seen Christmas Vacation until I was probably an adult. I was probably in college.
Man.
I mean, and because it was, it's kind of vulgar and it's more of an adult movie. Like, I wasn't allowed to watch it, as a kid. And so it wasn't until, I was a grown up and I'm like, what have I been missing out on this entire time? This is hilarious.
Yeah, I need to go back and watch that. I've missed some of those classics. I haven't seen them in a while now with kids. So I got to get back to some of those. That's up there too. I say Home Alone's my favorite Christmas movie. Vacation's up there. And I bet I haven't seen that in 10 years. But
I would also put, if we're talking like worst Christmas movies, I think, and we talked about A Christmas Story 2, anytime there's like, a sequel, and I think Home Alone 2 is an exception because that's still really good too.
Awesome.
But a lot of sequels are not good. Like, and that's just in general. But like the Santa Claus 2, the Santa Claus 3, I can do without. Give me the original.
I never even saw him.
Give me the original Tim Allen. I don't need all the sequels. I'm kind of that way too.
Yeah, I agree with that too. That's part of what makes Home Alone so cool is they did get the sequel, and it's just as good. Like, they're both equally good. I think both Home Alone and Home Alone 2. I'm trying to think if there's any more that register for me. I don't think so. I think that's it. But yeah, the bad ones, I just haven't seen them. And so that's interesting. A Christmas Story, another reason I love that. My brother absolutely got his mouth washed out with soap. And I remember seeing that. And it just, like, that memory of that cracks me up. Like, like My parents, just like Ralphie's parents, it's like money where your mouth is. Like, we'll wash your mouth out with soap.
Yeah.
You use the language. They
Yep.
absolutely did that. And I just laughed when I saw that.
So there's a list of like the top worst Christmas movies of all time. Santa with Muscles, the Hulk Hogan one, is on that list.
That just can't be that bad. I gotta see
There's
that one.
also the Star Wars Holiday Special that is on the list back in 1978.
If you were going to consider that a movie, I would say that's probably the worst, but it really wasn't. It was just a one-off TV special that was just a terrible idea. But I guess if that's a movie, that's terrible. It's awful.
And then it looks like the other main one is Santa Claus versus the Martians? Is that or Battles the Martians? Whatever the name of that one is.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I've seen
didn't
it.
see that one.
I don't know if it's necessarily the worst. It's very, very bad, but there's comic value in watching it because it is that bad.
Are you guys big fans of like the old school claymation movies, the Rudolph and Frosty and all of that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm okay.
My kids love
I'm okay with that.
Rudolph.
I don't know. I'm never really been a huge
I'm kind of with you, Tommy. Never really was a big fan of that.
They're just tradition. They're like, I don't like, I'm not going to sit there and like find the time, but like the kids love them and they're fun and sweet. And I mean, they're the most classic of the classics. Listen, I got to tell you guys, I'm watching and it's muted Santa with Muscles trailer right now. And I think this is going to be great. It's going to be better than Jingle All the Way. Like, if we're talking about cheese, like the absolute cheese factor, this looks like it's going to be fantastic. The Hulkster taking on some bad guys dressed up as Santa Claus with missile launchers and other things. Like, no context needed.
I actually like Jingle All the Way, and I know a lot of people don't. It shows up on lists.
A lot of people do. A lot of people
like
do.
it.
We watched it because it showed up on that
like
list.
Sinbad. I've always been a Sinbad fan, and of course, Phil Hartman's in the movie, the late great Phil Hartman. I mean, how can you go wrong with that?
I love all three of those people. I love Arnold and Sinbad and Phil Hartman, but I did not think that movie was very good. It was all over the place. It didn't really again, if we're talking about that, like Santa with Muscles isn't going to be an assignment for me. This looks like it's going to be fantastic. I like it. I mean, Hulk with the pythons, seriously, like blowing up Humvees. Like, what are we missing here?
What more do you need for the holiday season than Hulk Hogan blowing up Humvees?
Mila Kunis is in it, apparently. Must have been very young.
I didn't know that.
Must have been one of her first gigs. I'm trying to see if there's anybody else I know. I don't think there is. There's an actor named Garrett Morris that's in it that I certainly recognize.
He was on SNL back in the day.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. He was. That's where I recognized him from. Yeah, he's in it. Yeah. So we're going to check that out. I don't believe the list on that one. All right. Jason throws in Fred Claus with Vince Vaughn. That did make it on a lot of the lists. I don't know that I saw that one. Generally, I like Vince Vaughn a lot. It looked like they tried to get him into a lot of Christmas movies. He's in like 2 or 3 of these bad list ones. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. We've got Enrique on there. He says it's a good Christmas movie nobody talks about. What's up, Enrique? Welcome to Sports Daily.
Dude, I checked it out last year, and, I'm like you. Home Alone and Home Alone 2 are my favorite Christmas movies. But Fat Man with Mel Gibson is right up in my top 5 as of last year. Fat Man with Mel Gibson, and there's a lot of other actors in there that I don't know their name, by heart. But man, a lot of talent in that movie, and it caught me off guard. I was kind of like ready to switch it off.
I remember seeing previews for this. Yeah,
it's got lots of action in there, a lot of kid and adult humor. It's I'm just surprised that more people don't talk about it, man.
So this one, I think this one, if I remember it right, like this was kind of Walton Goggins is in this movie.
I love Walton
who's
Goggins.
Boyd Crowder and incredible.
A treat.
And so I think this movie feels like, if I remember it right, was sort of created out of the Die Hard as a Christmas movie conversation, right? They just took like some extreme version of a wild and crazy action movie themed around Christmas or something. Yeah, I got to check that out. I wonder if that streams anywhere. I'll
the
find
main
that.
villain of that movie is like a spoiled little kid, and I don't think they could have cast that actor an actor for that role any better, man. It's just, yeah, man. It's
I see the
definitely
kid
top
now. I've
5
seen him
Christmas
in other
movies for me
stuff.
now.
Yeah, I've seen him in that
He's,
kid and other stuff. It's good stuff.
That kid is a little piece of work when it comes to, the roles that he takes on as an actor. But yeah, man. So yeah, I just want to throw that in there, man, because literally nobody ever talks about that one, and I feel like it's definitely a top 5.
Yeah, okay, look, if Boyd Crowder's in it, I'm in. I'm going to check that one out at some point. I got it. Tommy, hold me to that. Don't let me forget about Fat Man, because that does look like that's probably pretty entertaining. Thanks,
Chances
Enrique.
are, if you got at least 3 things you stream from, you'll find it for free.
Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, I'm not going to pay for it. It's got to be there.
Yeah. All right, guys. Just a Merry Christmas.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Enrique.
Here's
Appreciate
another good option that you remember the movie I'll Be Home for Christmas. Jonathan Taylor Thomas is in it from the 90s.
I do, but I don't know if I saw it.
That's not a great one. That's one I
it.
remember watching when I was younger, and I thought that one's not very good. Deck the Halls with Matthew Broderick and Danny DeVito, where they play rival dads that are trying to decorate their houses the best way. That one's not good either. Like, those ones make lists also. And then we can't forget about the all-time GOAT of bad movies, but they're so bad they're actually good. Ernest Saves Christmas. We can't forget about that one.
Easy with your Ernest slander.
I love Ernest.
I'm not sure
that
I'll.
So
I'm
bad,
not sure that I'll have it.
It's so bad that they're good.
Yeah, I agree. That's like the Hulk Hogan movie. Like, it's going to be so bad that it's good. I just thought with Jingle All the Way, or whichever one it was with Arnold Schwarzenegger, it wasn't so bad that it was good. It was so bad that it was kind of bad.
Well, here's the problem with Jingle All the Way is that it's a fairly traditional story, of going shopping and trying to find a gift or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it goes completely off the rails the last 20 minutes of the movie, where Schwarzenegger's flying around and, it's like Sinbad's trying to kill the kid to get the toy. Like, it gets really amped up really quickly at the very end.
Out of nowhere.
Right?
Like, just make Sinbad a sinister character all the way through, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Sinbad and I like Schwarzenegger and I've loved Phil Hartman, but I just that movie missed for me. All right.
Well, if I can make one more pitch for Santa's sleigh being the worst, I've got a quote from the movie here. Okay. One of our heroes says, "The clock just struck midnight at the pole. Christmas is officially over for you, Santa." And Bill Goldberg as Santa Claus says, most people make that mistake. The correct time at the pole is completely discretionary because the poles are where all time zones actually converge.
Oh, Lord.
Listen.
Imagine Bill Goldberg delivering that.
I am a pro wrestling fan. You guys know that. I think Bill Goldberg was an awesome character, but his skill set was not with a microphone in his hand. Like, you had me at Bill Goldberg. Like, he and Hulk Hogan are not the same in that way, Jad. So I'm with you there.
There's a movie that goes all the way back to 1959 that is simply titled Santa Claus. And the plot of the movie is Santa has to save Earth from Satan. That's the whole plot of the movie back in 1959. It's a fantasy film. Santa Claus works in outer space and battles with a demon named Pitch, sent to Earth by Lucifer to ruin Christmas by killing Santa.
Well, that doesn't sound very nice of Lucifer. That's probably not one I'm going to check out. Listen, I hate horror movies. I think I've said that. Like, so I don't want to see in most of that anyway. Like, I don't need any of that. Like, can we stop with trying to make like Christmas movies scary? Like, why do we need to do that? Like, just get out of here with all that. I don't.
Okay, Santa's sleigh may not be gory, but it certainly isn't scary. It's very much more funny.
Yeah, it's the gore that I don't like. Like, if it's, whatever, if it's a play on it, like Bad Santa, I have no problem with. Man, I need to go watch Bad. I think I've seen that like one time.
It's
and that's
really
it.
Good. It's really good.
Yeah, I love Billy Bob Thornton. Speaking of Billy Bob, we are off the rails here. Are you guys watching the new season of Fargo?
No, I'm not.
Doesn't have Billy Bob Thornton was in the original season. That show is so good. And the new season's a lot of fun. Anyway, all right. Let's give away some Turnpike Troubadour tickets, shall we? Our final pair. Thanks, everybody, for being festive with us here. One more pair to go. They're coming with Trampled by Turtles and the Red Clay Strays at Intrust Bank Arena on May 3rd. It's a 7 o'clock show, and you can get a pair of tickets. Go on us here at Sports Daily by being the first caller right now on the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. Jad will get us a winner. We'll come back with more Sports Daily right after this. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. It's got some regional appeal, Tommy, but how about Drew Lock and his game last night afterward? Clearly emotional, getting that kind of win. You forget about Drew Lock. He had some prospects, and people sort of wondered about his pro prospects, and he's been with Geno Smith and behind him, but he had a really good game last night. Efficient, got it done. That was pretty cool to see him come through that way.
Yeah, in a world where there are a lot of backup quarterbacks out there that have gotten action this season, I mean, I think that, the Seahawks have to feel pretty good that the guy that they've got behind Geno Smith is Drew Lock. Not that he's incredible, not that he's going to be, this superstar or anything, but he's viable, and he's competent, and he did what needed to be done. That throw that he made to JSN to win the game, he put that ball the only place that it could possibly go for it to be successful, and it was. So hats off to him. I loved his post-game interview with Lisa Salters. That was good to see. I was happy for the guy.
Yeah, it is always good to see that stuff. I don't know if he has any future as a starting quarterback in the NFL. I was reminded,
a lot of teams would like to have him as a backup for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Seattle would, and it sort of reminded me last night of Pete Carroll does an incredible job there. And Pete Carroll was an enemy, in his time at USC, and I was a Notre Dame fan. And then the game against I did not like Pete Carroll. I didn't like USC at all. And then he goes to Seattle. And I don't love or hate Seattle. Don't really, I'm sort of indifferent. I like them, I think, in general. And they just are consistently good. Like they're always in the mix. We brought up our list, not really a list when we were talking about coaches we'd start with. And I know Pete Carroll's old, man, but you talk about like it just doesn't matter. Like his teams are always in the mix. They always feel like they win games that they shouldn't. Remember before last season, they were supposed to be the worst team in football. And then Geno comes in and all of a sudden they're
Drew Lock
actually
was
pretty
supposed
good.
To be the starter, right? Like that was part of the trade.
Yeah.
With Russell Wilson going to Denver, Drew Lock was supposed to come in and start for the Seahawks. And I mean, you mentioned Pete Carroll being old. He is, but he's got more energy than probably 3/4 of the coaches in the NFL right now. I mean, the guy just has so much energy on the sideline. I'm not a big fan, honestly. I've never really liked Pete Carroll, never really liked the Seahawks, but what he's done with them is pretty impressive.
It's crazy. And they were missing like two key pieces out of their secondary last night against that pass game, and they still got it done. Just underrated, I guess, is the thing when we talk about, great coaches and the thing. Underrated for sure with Pete Carroll. And who knows how long he'll do this. Geno's been fine, but they've got some really interesting weapons. And, if they were ever able to land somehow like a top tier elite level, or maybe Geno and Drew Lock are enough if they can continue to build up the defense. I don't know. Like they're an interesting team.
By the way, this is completely off topic, but I want to get this in before we take our final break. I watched yesterday afternoon the very first bowl game of bowl season, Old Dominion and Western Kentucky in the famous Toastery Bowl. I don't know if I might have been the only one on the planet watching this game, but it was remarkable. Old Dominion got out to a 28-0 lead. Western Kentucky came back, tied the game, forced overtime. Then they won on a field goal. Western Kentucky did. It was like the 4th largest comeback in bowl history or something like that on a Monday afternoon, a bowl that I never heard of with two teams I don't care about. And it was incredible.
Yeah, I can't do it. I don't care. Like I cannot watch things that don't have any meaning. And I know it means something to the kids, but it doesn't mean anything to the rest of us. I'm glad that game was awesome, and I'm glad people love bowl season. I never want bowl season to go away.
What else are you going to do at 1:30 on a Monday afternoon? I mean, I didn't watch and keep stats. I had it on in the background as I was working. Not like I'm like tuned into it, locked in. I got work to do too, but man,
anything else? Like it was on in the background too, but I wasn't like looking up at it. I don't know what I was doing. Listening to the Panhandlers to try and figure out if I'm going to go out to see them play at the, I don't know. I just wasn't.
Famous Toastery Bowl. I love that.
Famous Toastery. Yeah. Infamous now because it'll, and the appropriate level of humor afterward was there. Again, I think bowl season's great. I think it's fun for your team when they make it and all those things. I just I can't help but wish for this 12-team playoff with college football. I just can't wait for it to
it's great, but Old Dominion and Western Kentucky are not getting into the 12-team playoff.
They're going to continue in the Tostada Bowl
on a Monday afternoon at 1:30.
I know. That's what's beautiful about bowl season. People can bet. I can't even bet it. I can't even make myself bet them. I will. Even the big games, outside of the CFP, those 4 games, those two games, I guess, I can't even bet them because I don't even know, are these teams, do they care about this? Is their quarterback there? How many play? I can't do it. It's too hard to try to bet. So for me, now with all the players deciding not to play in them, I'm I don't even know. I mean, I can go to our friends at BetQL and see what they think, I guess, but I can't do it. I just can't do it.
Kind of risky, I think, to try to bet a bowl game.
Yeah, it is. Not the CFP games are a little bit different. 869-1240, the IHOP hotline. That'll be good for you tomorrow as well. Appreciate all our listeners and Kayleen, who wins that final pair of Turnpike Troubadour tickets. Way to go, Kayleen. Enjoy the show on us. We'll come back. We'll tell you what's on the network today when we return.
The $5 Cravings Box is back at Taco Bell, and it's the real thing. We're talking a Chalupa Supreme, a cheesy, beefy 5-layer burrito, a crunchy taco, cinnamon twist, and a medium drink, all for just $5. That's a lot of food for not a lot of dollars. In other words, a wise business deal, like greeting clients with a firm handshake and a delicious 3-course meal that's only $5. Order your $5 Cravings Box on the Taco Bell app today. At limited participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only while supplies last. Contact local store for price and participation which vary. Drinks exclude freezes. Price excludes tax.
This holiday season, all your wishes are coming true on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Lutz, Lutz, and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL and KFH. 21 plus and present in Kansas. First online real money wager only. $5 pregame money line wager required. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
Close your eyes right now and think about your favorite Christmas movie. Go ahead, pick any one you want. Now, think about the ending. Have you ever noticed how almost every single movie this time of year is filled with miracles and magic? That's because Christmas truly is a time when the most wonderful dreams often come true. At Mike Seltzer Jewelers, 2929 North Rock Road in Comatera Center, we'd like to do our part to make your Christmas just like the movies. From now through December 24th, almost everything in the store is 50% off. 50% off the exquisite one-of-a-kind jewelry you've come to expect from a name as trusted as ours. And with 50% off, you can afford to make dreams come true on Christmas morning for the person you love the most. With special financing available, the experience in helping customers make Christmas everything it could and should be. Why would you go anywhere else? 50% off through December 24th at Mike Seltzer Jewelers, where the magic of Christmas awaits you and happy endings are our specialty.
This is Evan Lease with David Lease Plumbing, wishing you a joyous and blessed Christmas season. Whether your water heater begins to leak when family arrives in town, your garbage disposal stops working when cleaning the refrigerator of leftovers, or your child decided to flush a brand new toy down your toilet, we're happy to help. Give David Lease Plumbing a call at 945-0117 to schedule a service call. Merry Christmas from our family to yours. May your homes be filled with warmth, laughter, and the true meaning of Christmas.
Ho, ho, ho!
Toppers Plus Truck and RV has gift ideas for the truck owner on your Christmas list. Toppers Plus is Wichita's exclusive Lear dealer for truck caps and tonneaus. Plus, we're your authorized Rhino linings dealer, the leader in sprayed-on truck bed liners. Ride to Grandma's house in style this season with new floor mats by WeatherTech. You'll find stocking stuffers and gift certificates for the truck enthusiasts on your list at 333 Northwest Street in Wichita or toppersplusks.com.
Make the truck work for you!
Join us at Odyssey as we all do our one thing. Together millions of things for our planet. This holiday season, invest in some LED Christmas lights. They use significantly less energy than regular bulbs. When we each share our one thing, it becomes a million things for our planet. What's your one thing?
The KFH Studios, powered by Devon James Injury Lawyers. Call 888-8888. That's 888-8888.
We'll talk pro football tonight, the weekly edition of the Chiefs Kingdom Show with the play-by-play voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, Mitch Holtis, hosting. Chiefs coming off that win on the road at New England and getting ready to host the Las Vegas Raiders on Christmas Day. A lot to talk about on the Chiefs Kingdom Show, 6 o'clock this evening, and that's right here on 97.5 and 1240 KFH. College women's basketball last night in Manhattan. 12th-ranked Kansas State beats Oral Roberts. Boy, do they. 102-59. Senior All-American Aoka Lee with 5 blocked shots, 24 points, and a career-high 21 rebounds. Her 53rd career double-double, the most in K-State women's basketball history. As the K-State ladies have won 27 straight non-conference home games in Manhattan. K-State women are now 11-1 on the season, ranked 12th in the nation, their best start in 14 years. I'm Ted, the Sports Head.
Live sports radio 24/7. This is 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Wichita's most listened to sports radio. 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
We heard Ted there talking about K-State women's basketball. That's going to be a fun follow this year. Not only Aoka Lee, who's awesome, and they're awesome collectively, but 2 locals, Taryn Sides, Ziana Walker, girls we've covered throughout their high school careers. Really excited to see that team. Okay, coming up on the network today here on KFH, you've got Jim Rome at 11, Bob and Jeff at 2, Zach Gelb from 4 to 6 before the Chiefs Kingdom Show at 6 o'clock tonight. Glad to do it. We've got a Hump Day edition coming up tomorrow. Wichita State Athletic Director Kevin Saul will join us, interested to get how it all played out with Ronnie DeGray. That will be an interesting story. So we'll get into all of that tomorrow. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for chiming in on the Christmas movie topic. Congratulations to our winners. For Jad and Tommy, I'm Jacob. We'll see you tomorrow.